Hi everybody, and welcome to Sew Along with Jan and part 4 of the Kimberbell Nativity Bench Pillow. So in this video, we're actually going to be quilting the borders, and one of the borders is just a plain tan strip. It's about 1.5 inches wide, okay? And then the other border is a bunch of little blocks, all different colors of fabric sewn together to make a border, and then we're going to quilt it as one piece. So I do this a little differently than the instructions. I tell you, if you've never done this before, to go ahead and print out the instructions for the quilting, which are on when you buy the quilting designs for the borders, it's on there. The instructions are in there, and it gives you a whole bunch of different sizes. Now, this particular one is the one it calls for, and the reason I like this one is because this small border we're going to do first says, "Joy to the world, the Lord is come," and then you can do it a couple of different ways, and it says, "Let earth receive her king." So so it gives you the verse, I like the verse of the song. So I'm going to use this inner border, option A, because I have I'm going to use option B. Option A is for people who have shorter hoops. So there's one file that is 1x10 and another one that's 1x7. That gives you "Joy to the world, the Lord is come." And then you just repeat it over and over if you have a shorter hoop. Now, if you have the longer hoops like I do, you can do the 1x14 and the 1x12 design. So this is on page 24 under inner border, and it's border Christmas 6. So I'm going to use that 14-inch file, and then we're going to use a 12-inch file. So this is a little different than normally doing a border. You're usually using the same file over and over and over again. But in this case, we're trying to get the words, to be the song. So it's good. The first one, the 14-inch one's going to say, "Joy to the world, the Lord is come." And then the 12-inch one's going to say, "Let earth receive her king." So that way it'll finish the verse, that little first part of the verse. The other thing that I did, and at the beginning, I kind of hinted at this when I'll talk about this a little bit too, but at the very beginning, it tells you to cut your borders. Let me get back here to the part where it talks about the cutting. Oops. It says to cut your borders at 2, if you're doing the quilt by, block by block quilting, to do cut your borders 2 inches wide and by the width of the fabric. Well, I actually cut mine the actual width they're supposed to be, 1.5 inches, because I find it easier to do the method that I like better with them cut the right length instead of having them be too wide, because then you got to trim them off at the end and try to keep your words in the center. So, and the other thing I do differently, so I did trim these at 1.5. So I'm doing the traditional quilting. That's the size I actually trimmed mine. 1.5 inches by width of fabric. So this is one of my borders here. Okay. So this is 1.5 inches. The reason I do this is I do not, and in the instructions for the borders, it actually tells you to put shape flex on the back of the borders. And I do not do that. I do not do that. Sorry, my phone rang. I don't do that because when you put shape flex on, often the fabric will slightly shrink when you hit it with the iron. And I think what was happening is people were having problems with their borders being too narrow then, and so that they increased the size, but then you got to trim them down. I don't like to trim them down, and I think I've quilted every border that I've ever done on a Kimberbell project without shape flex on my borders, and they quilt just fine. So there's not as many stitches. It's usually kind of an outline stitch, like a red work stitch. So they really are fine. And so that's what I'm going to do. So no shape flex on these. I'm not going to put any shape flex on. I'm going to use my batting, of course, but I trimmed mine to the traditional size. So and this border is going to turn out finished 1 inch, so it would be 1.5 wide. So I trim mine at 1.5. Okay. So that's a couple of things that I do differently. The other thing I do differently, as we get into these instructions, you'll see, I do not use tape. I use glue. And the glue really keeps everything down so that you have it in the right spot and it doesn't move. So I'm going to show you how to use some fabric glue instead of the tape. Otherwise I do it the same, but I just changed a couple things that seem to work better for me. Okay, so we're going to talk, this is the first border, so we're going to talk about this narrow one first, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about the second border, because I also did something different with the pieced border. Okay, all right, so we're going to do option B then, because I've got a bigger hoop, and we're going to start with the 1x14 file, and that's the beginning of the verse there. So I've already got it up here. This is the 1x14. You can see it ends up being 1.5 by 14. But this is the other trick I like to do. I like to do more than one border at a time. So I can do 2 borders. Sorry, my cat is also out here helping me, so she thinks she needs to be held. Sorry. So I'm going to take this border. Okay, so I brought it up and I set it. And then on my machine, I'm going to hit Edit. And this little button here, most of you will have a machine that's similar to this or has this. It is duplicate. So I'm going to hit the duplicate button, and then I'm going to move these just a little ways apart so there's just a little space in between them. They don't need to have too much space, because that way you can use one piece of batting too, which is really nice. Just a moment, I'll have to get rid of my little helper over here because she'll meow through the whole thing. So give me just a second. I'll be right back. Sorry about that, phone call and the cat meowing. So I don't know what she wanted. I already fed her and gave her treats, so she should be fine. So, all right, so I've got my 2 borders out here, and I've left a little space in between. It just leaves you a little space. You don't need it to be real big, but maybe an inch or so. So I might move mine over just a little bit more. Okay, like that. And then I'm going to go down here to the bottom. Going to hit this button, which is the selection button. I'm going to select all, and then I'm going to go ahead and center them in my hoop. So I use the select all button. It's down here. Okay. And then I'm going to, most of the bigger Brother Baby Lock machines will have this. So you hit this, and then you select all, and then you hit the little polka dot button, and that centers everything in the middle of the hoop, which will really help. And then you can use like one piece of batting for both of these borders, and then we don't have to, do each one separately. If you're uncomfortable doing this, then you can just do them separately. But I found that I like doing them together, and it goes faster, and then I get both borders done at the same time. Okay, so we got these centered. Now I'm going to hit embroidery. Now this is the other trick. Remember I told you when we started some of these that they always put the same colors for each step on these borders and also on the block by block designs. So this is where this comes in very handy, because a lot of the machines, or a lot of them do, under layout up here, I have this little button right here that looks like 3 spools. That is color sequence. It's like color sort. So I'm going to hit this button. And then when I go back into looking here, it's going to put both my placement lines for my batting together, both my tack down lines for my batting together, both my placement lines for my fabric together, and so on, so that I can do both borders at the same time, and everything's going to sew at the same time, so I don't have to go back and forth between the 2 borders. So this works out really, really well. Now, if you don't have color sort on your machine, I just open them. I've opened these up in software because I still have one machine that doesn't have color sort on it. It's an older machine. And so what I do is I open them up in software, and I just bring 2 in, and then I save them as one file, and I color sort them in my software before I send them to my machine. And it really, really helps, because this really makes it go very fast. Okay. So the first step we're going to do is with this longer one. The second one we're going to do is going to be an 8x12 version, because it is going to be just the rest of that little verse. So we're going to do 2 different files so that we get all the words we want. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to do this with the tan thread. It says to use the tan, and it's going to be a little darker than my tan fabric here. You'll need and again, no shape flex on the borders. I didn't put any on. and it's the entire width of the fabric. So we're going to basically need the whole thing. So we'll just quilt the whole thing. We're going to be a little long, but not by very much. So, okay. So what we're going to do is I've got my brown thread in the needle. This is the tan, that kind of tan color we were using like for the little animals. And then I've just got my bobbin thread in the bobbin, and I've got my no-show mesh in the hoop. And this is my 9.5 by 14 hoop. Okay, so the first step in all of these projects is going to be the placement line for the batting. So we're going to stitch out step number 1 and get the, whoops here, I'll make sure I get all my little pieces here. This, so hopefully you'll be able to see, I always have to be careful of the camera, this hoop's really long. Went up with the camera here, so. All right, so I get my chunk of batting. I just use a chunk. You can cut it in the instructions, you know, it tells you to cut it, but I never do. I just use a chunk. So this will give us quite a bit to do all at once. That'll be nice. And again, you could do this in the shorter hoops. They had one that you could do in a 5x7 and a 6x10. If you have a smaller machine, then just do those and then just repeat those. And that's all on page 24. Border, and then option A is for the smaller borders, and bigger, or I should say smaller hoops, and then option B is for the larger hoops. So I figured since I have a larger hoop, I'm just going to use larger hoop and do it this way. And we also will get a little bit more of the verse because the smaller hoops you only get part of it, and we get more of it with the longer ones. So these are going to end up, and this is a 1x14 pattern, and the other one is going to be 1x12. So it's actually going to finish up 1 inch when we're stitched together, and it's going to be 1.5 doing the quilting. Okay, so I'm going to lay my chunk of batting up here. Get some of this fuzz up here. I'm going to lay my chunk of batting over both my placement lines, because you notice it did both the placement lines. Get these up here. Just a second, I gotta get this straightened out. Okay. And then step number 2, just like all the box, is going to be the tack down line for the batting. But like I said, I do this just a little differently than in the instructions. I found a couple of easier things that went faster because I've quilted quite a lot of borders, and you know, sometimes you have to, like some of the square pillows, you got to do 4 of them. So I do like 2 at a time. And sometimes I use a different hoop, but these are longer, so I needed to use my 9.5 by 14. This worked out just fine. So it's going to go up, and it probably will go around them twice. Yep. So basically what I'm doing here on the instructions for the actual borders of this is steps number 4 and 5 on that. But I use glue, so I'm going to tell you to go get these little Solamine glue sticks are great for this procedure, and they have a little narrower glue. Well, maybe I don't have any glue in here at all. I don't. I have to go see it. I'm out. No glue. So this one is great, but there's no glue in it. Just a second, I got a glue stick. While this is stitching, I'll put a glue stick in. And I love these because they're about 1/4 of an inch wide instead of I like the Dritz glue sticks really well too, but they're a little bit you know, wider. So like when you're doing this, the narrower is nice. Okay, let's see here. Looks like I need to pull this all the way out. Here we go. And then put this one in. So you just kind of, here's the little thing that it comes in. This works great for needles too. So if you need to, that's a good reuse for those. Push it down, and then I'm just going to start turning it and turn this off, and then it just goes right down in there. There's our little glue stick we're going to use. Yeah, and you keep these. I use these for needles. There's a little cap on them. I think I dropped the cap on the floor, but I'll find it. And then I put my used needles in here until there's, you know, it's full, and then I throw them away inside that plastic piece. So you don't have to, you don't stick needles in your trash. Okay, so there are our 2 battings that are all tacked down now. So we're going to go ahead and trim these off close to the stitches, just like we did the blocks. So this starts out just the same way as we did the blocks. It's just a little different as you move along. Otherwise, it's basically the same. Kind of in the same order, you know, the first step, the second step. It's all only 5 steps, just like the other blocks. But there's a couple things you do that differently. So we'll trim these off. And then see, I can do both of them at the same time, which is really nice. Yeah, you want them to be far enough apart so that, you know, like your fabrics aren't going to overlap. So I usually try to keep an inch or so apart so the fabric can lay flat. But I like it to be able to use one piece of batting too. So I'm going to go up through the middle here. But it really saves time to do 2 of them at a time if you can. You know, if your hoops are big enough. And these are narrow. So like the next borders that we do are wider. So I'm going to have to do one of these bigger hoops too, but just for the length, but also for the width. I think those are 3.5 inch. You know, they finish 3 inch, I believe, borders. So I kind of looked at them, but I haven't looked at them that close. All right. We have to sew them together first, though. All right, so here is my batting. Okay, so now we're ready to do step number 3, which is going to be the placement line for the fabric. Oh, there's the rest of my glue stick. It's up inside the cap. Look at there. I don't know if I can get it out of there or not. Found it. I thought there was glue in here, but I don't know if I can get it out now. It's stuck in there really good right now. Yep, there we go. Guess I'll just pull it out. It was all stuck inside the cap. Now I got a new one. Went to put the cap on and I had this great big divot in there. I'm like, what's that? All right, we're going to get some of the glue off my scissors now. So we got the first one. Placement line for the second one. I like doing the borders. They're really fun. And this border was really cool because it, you know, had the song verse on it. I thought that was neat. So, all right, we're going to need both of our borders. Do I have them all? And I'm going to go ahead and just trim off this. I've got a selvage on the top of mine, so I'm just going to trim the selvage off the top of it. So I'm starting on the, you know, regular fabric. There's one. Let's get the second one here. I'm just trimming off the selvage edge. You don't have to. You can leave it on, but I usually just trim it off. All right. So now, this is the trick. This is the cool trick that I figured out. It's like I was struggling with the tape because they have you tape, put a ball of tape up here and like a round little ball of tape up there, and you come down, and then it was scooting on me all the time. So this is how I learned to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this back so you can see a little bit better. Okay. I take my glue stick and I'm going to put glue above each one of these like that. And then I'm going to take my fabric, and it says to put it 1/2 inch, but I only do about 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to make sure that my fabric goes in between the lines that are coming, you know, straight down. So I'm going to stick this in down and put the other one up here. I'm going to stick it down. Okay. Oops. Must have gotten the wrong end. There we go. Put it down here. So I've only got it over there about 1/4 inch or so. All right, like that. Then I'm going to just flip these back. And this is why I cut them at the size it says to do. This border is 1.5 inches total. So then my fabric fits in here perfectly. So I'm just going to take the glue down like this, okay? Then I'm going to take my border and I'm going to bring it down, and I'm going to stick it down right inside that line on both sides. And this works way better if you don't have the shape flex on here, because you've got, you know, the fabric is a little bit more pliable. Then I'm going to take this out and scoot it up on the machine so you can see what I'm doing. I often take this out and put it and go over to my cutting table because it's, you know, the hoop's long. So we're going to go down a little bit further. lay it right in between those lines. So see, those are exactly 1.5 inches apart. And that's why I like to use the fabric, the right size, but just don't put any shape flex on it. Just use the fabric. You got batting in there for stabilizer. You're going to be good. Okay, lay this down. Make sure it's all good and straight. And then this helped me a lot because then it didn't move. That's what I was having so much trouble with, is that with the tape, putting a little ball of tape down here at the bottom, and then at the top, that it held the bottom and the top, but the side was scooching all over. So then I was taping, and I had all this tape, and it took me so long, and the glue is so much faster. So this is all that Soline glue stick, and I'll also give you the link in the description below this video. Okay, so there we go. So there's one, and we'll do the same thing with this other one here. And then the tails are going to lay down in your lap, okay? All right, so we're going to do the same thing here. Come down the sides. Stick it down. And you know it's not going to move because you got it stuck down well on both sides. Make sure you got it good and even. And it also doesn't then really, it doesn't like get smaller. I think it's the shape flex that made it, people were having trouble with size, and I just have never used the shape flex on it, so I've never had any problems. So I still like doing it this way. All right, so we're going to lay this down in between the lines, get it all even. Helps if you cut really evenly too. I notice I have a little divot here, so I must not have cut it very even. All right, so I'm going to do this part. But then it stays put for you when you're working with this stuff. All right, now we're going to lay this down. That's why we need, so now you know why I always sew out step number 3, which is the fabric placement line, because if I don't, I need it. So like in this case, we definitely need it, don't we? Because we need that line to help us get this border in here. So it's all lined up. Okay, so I'm going to lay the little tails in my lap here. Okay, and we're going to put this back in the machine. So I might bump the camera a little bit, getting this in. This hoop's really long. Okay, then step number 4 is going to tack down the fabric. So it's just going to sew down and tack down this fabric that we just put in here. But the glue is going to hold it in place, so you shouldn't have any issues. I watch it, if I kind of watch it, but I don't usually have any problems. It kind of does this one, and then it stops, and then it's going to jump over to the other side and go up the other side. So each one's separate, see? And then it's going to go up that side. So this is nice to be able to do them both at the same time. We're going to go up the other side. Okay, and I only did about 1/4 of an inch, maybe almost 1/2 inch at the top, but because I don't put any tape up there, I put glue up there, so it's all glued down. It's not going anywhere. All right, so then we're going to come down this one. But see how, since I've color sorted, that everything's going at the same time, and I can do these both at the same time. I found that very convenient. I've been doing it this way almost from the beginning. I think my first ones I realized I could do it this way, and it's so handy. Then you don't have to, it doesn't take so long. Because you do have to hoop these a few times. Like, we're probably going to hoop this about 3 or 4 times probably. All right. Okay, so now we're ready for the quilting. So I'm just going to start the quilting, and I'll stop the camera for a few minutes while it's quilting, but it's going to do Joy to the World, the Lord is Come on both of these. And then we're going to go on, and I'll show you how to do the next part of it. You're going to be using, normally we're using the same design, but in this case it's going to be a different one so that we get the words. So, and then I'll show you how to connect them together. So we'll be right back once this is stitched. Okay, so they're all stitched. So we've got Joy to the World, the Lord has Come. And then now we're ready to take this out of the hoop. So I know that sounds scary. So we're going to take these out of the hoop. and get ready for the next set. Oops, a second here. I did tape this to the top. My 9x14 hoop is a little bit long for my stabilizer, so I'll keep my tape because I'll need it here in a minute. There we go. Put this up here. Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to take this. I take scissors. Now you can run over to your cutting table and just trim this right up to the fabric. I just use scissors. I'm basically just trimming the stabilizer off, okay, right up to the edge of the fabric. And since this is exactly 1.5, it makes it really easy. You can just come right up to the edge of the fabric. Just going to go down this way. So I just use scissors to do this. It depends on what you like to do. So, and then we're going to go down this side. Sorry, my scissors are very sharp on the ends, and I have to be really careful because I catch everything on the edge. They poke into everything. So I'm just going to go down the edge here. I'm just kind of going right down the edge of the fabric. I need to have them sharpened. They're just about ready to be sharpened. All right, and then what I'm going to do is, this is where I like to make sure that I really get a nice end here. This is where it ended, and we still got the rest of this to quilt, you know. So flip your tail back. Don't cut that tail off, and then just trim the batting or the stabilizer away, so it's very close to the edge of the batting. Okay, so like that. So there's one of our borders. Let's get the other one out here. So once you get through the first couple hoopings, you just can go to town because you do the same thing over and over again until you're done. So you get all the way to the end of it. And I think the other design is Bethlehem. I think it's like Bethlehem. So I'm actually kind of going to see how that's going to look. It's cool. So I'm going to flip my little tail back. Don't cut your tail off. Don't cut that tail off of your border. Okay. And then I'm going to go down this side. You can cut the stabilizer off the top too, but I probably won't because I'm doing this in a hurry for you guys. So you can do it once you get ready to trim them, because we'll have to trim it off a little bit. It'll be a little long, so. All right. All the stabilizer is trimmed off. All right. So now we got these two little wheels here. So I guess I'll just trim this off. I always usually get rid of the stabilizer. Okay, so we got this little deal. So here's the quilted part, and here's, you know, the tail that we need to quilt yet. Oops, I've lost the other one. All right. So now I am going to go put more stabilizer, no show mesh, in my hoop. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you how to get ready to do the second set of this. So the second one on this one, since it was the longer ones, I need the 12-inch ones. Let's just do this real quick and then I'll go get the stabilizer. Let's finish quilting. Now I need to use this probably one more time. So I'm going to go ahead and hit memory on my machine and save it in the machine so I don't have to set this one up again. I don't think we'll need the 12-inch one again, but I think we'll need the 14-inch one again. Okay, so now we're going to go in, and I'm just going to go back to the beginning. We're going to do the same thing with the 12-inch one. That's the one they said, 1 by 12, yes. So we're going to go into embroidery, go back to my stick, and the quilting, and the border. Okay, and then we're looking for the 1 by 12. So this is the rest of the words. This is let earth receive her king. So we're going to use that one. I'm going to set that. Then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go into edit, and I'm going to duplicate it so I can do the second one. Then I'm just going to kind of move it over. You want to maybe an inch or so in between, just a little space in between. Okay. Then I'm going to go down here to select all, and then I'm going to hit the little polka dot button and center them in the hoop. Okay. Then we're going to hit OK. And then I'm going to hit embroidery. And now I'm going to go up to layout, and I'm going to hit this little color sequence button. That way, when I go to do these, it's gonna do all the placement lines together, all the tack down lines together, all the quilting together, and so on. So now we're ready for the second one. So give me a second. I need to go get another piece of stabilizer in my hoop, and I'll show you how to do the second hooping. Okay, so I've got my no show mesh stabilizer in here. Still got my tan thread, and we're ready to start. We already set our design up. Let Earth Receiver King, and this is going to be the 12-inch one because I'm doing the 14 and the 12. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click go, and we're going to do our placement line for our batting. Just like we started the other one. It's going to start off just the same way, but then it's just going to be just slightly different. Once you see it, you'll understand what you got to do. I got to find some scissors here to get, I've got a big chunk of batting in the way here. But it does really help to do 2 of them at a time. If you can work it out. I've even done 4 at the same time because you can do the same thing. Let's say we had to have 4 of these borders. You could run them all the way across the whole hoop and they'd all be done. Now I am using my 9.5 by 14 hoop again since I have to go back and do that one again. I think maybe just that one more hooping will be enough. So I didn't go down to my 8 by 12. You could do this one in an 8 by 12, but I just left my 9.5 by 14 in. So we got our placement lines. And then we're going to lay our chunk of batting up here. Okay. These actually go pretty fast. We're going to lay our chunk of batting on here over those 2 placement lines. Okay. And then we're going to tack down the batting. Okay, so I've got my batting tacked down. Now it's time to trim again. So I'll do the trimming here and I'll be right back when that's done. You know, you've seen me do this before. So I'm trying to keep this video not too long. I wanted to show you a whole, a whole pattern of this, but some of this you don't need to sit here and watch me trim. So I'll turn the camera off for a minute while I trim, and then I'll be right back, and then I'll show you how to do the next step. We're going to do the placement line for the fabric then. Okay, so they're all trimmed. Ready for step 3. It's going to do our placement lines again for the fabric. So we'll get our placement lines on here, and then I'll show you how to put the border on to do the next portion of it. Okay, so we got our placement line on here, and that's going to help us get our fabric on. But this is the way this works then. So we're needing to keep going this way. So this part up here is the part that we've already quilted. So I'm going to flip this, and I'm going to do one of these at a time. It's a little easier to do this one at a time. Sorry, this hoop is really tight. Okay. So I'm going to flip the fabric back, and here's the batting, that we trimmed off with the stabilizer there, okay? And that's going to be at the top of the hoop. So let me get this, oops, under here. Sorry, I'm getting everything caught. Okay, so I'm going to take my glue and go across the top there. And I'm going to take this piece, and I've folded back, got it folded back. And again, I usually do this at my table because it's just a little easier if you've got it all laid flat, but I want you to be able to see here at the camera, okay? So I'm going to butt those 2 pieces of batting right up to each other as close as I can get it, and push it down onto the glue, okay? And then when I fold this back, this is the tail that we need to quilt yet, okay? That's coming down towards me. This part is going to lay up here. So remember when you put your hoop in and out that you don't catch this. So this is nice and flat right here, and it's the 2 pieces of batting are connected together right here, okay? So then I'm just going to take my glue stick, just like I did before, come down the sides, lay this in to the 2 lines. And again, this is trimmed to the 1.5 inches, so it makes this really easy. I really like this. So I'm going to have to take this out a second so I can get up a little higher. Okay. So yeah, so take this over to your cutting table or something to do this. It makes it easier than doing it here on the machine, but this way you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to take my glue down a little further. Stick this down between the lines. Yeah, when I figured out the glue, I thought yep, that's it. That works for me. Then it doesn't move around while I'm trying to work with it. Okay, we're going to bring this down. And between the lines. We'll do the second one the same way. Like that. And then up here, you can see here's the quilted part, and the two pieces of batting are all lined up right there. And then we're going to quilt on down this way. Okay, so let's do this one. We're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to flip the fabric back so I can see where the batting is. This one's got a little chunk out. Let me trim this little piece of stabilizer out of there. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing. Grab my glue stick. And this is that sew line glue stick. Put that across the top. Flip this back so I can see where the two pieces of batting are, and then you can get them nice and lined up right between the lines, the placement lines. Like that. Push it down really well. And then I'm going to take my glue stick and come down in between. The smaller one like this works really nice because it goes between the batting and your placement line. So it's just about the same width. It's about 1/4 of an inch. Push it down real well. Get it all lined up right inside the lines. Flip this up. Do a little bit more. So this works pretty slick. And I can get my borders done pretty quickly this way. I think we might need to do, well, I think we may only need to do one more hooping. I'm not sure. Might have to do 2. So I'll probably save this one too, just in case. So I don't have to set it up again. All right. All right. Normally, like I said, you're doing the same design over and over, but this one had different words in it, so that's why there's 2 different designs. Okay, so I think we're all ready. Got it all tacked down. Now be very careful then. Remember, you got your tails up here now. Don't get them under your hoop and get them sewed in to your border. So you'll have to kind of watch those when you put it in, that it doesn't get underneath your hoop or anything. Make sure they're nice and flat up there. Okay, it looks pretty good. Then step number 3 is going to be our tack down lines for our fabric. So we're going to tack these down, and then I'll be back in a minute and we'll start the quilting. Okay, so they're all tacked down, and you can always tell if you're pretty close to being nice and lined up, because you know your tack down lines are going to line up. And now we're ready for step number 5, the quilting. So now let's going to put in let earth receive their king. So, and this is going to continue on with the lettering and the verse of the song. So I'll be back when this is done, and we'll have to do it one more time, maybe 2, because we're going to need most of this border. It's 30, I think the pillow's around 38 or 39 inches long, so we're going to need most of this. Okay, so they're all quilted. So I'm going to go ahead, turn the camera off for a minute while I cut these out of here and hoop my hoop up again. And I know we're going to need at least 1 more hooping, maybe 2. So we'll have to see how we do at the end here. So we're going to go all the way to the end because we're going to need almost all of it. So I will be right back once I get them trimmed, and we will go on to the next section. Okay, so I'm all ready for the next section. So I'm going to hit memory on this one too in case I need it again. I'm just going to save it in my machine. And then we're going to go back to home, and I'm going to go get the first one we did, because this is the 14-inch one that has the first part of the verse in it, and that must be this one. Yep, Joy to the World. Okay, we're going to set that one, and now we're going to hit embroidery, and I got to make sure we'll have to do our color sort again, because it doesn't save the color sort, but it saved the design. So I just set the color sort back on, and now it'll start doing the same thing we've already done for the other 2 sections. I'm going to go ahead and get started here with my placement line for my batting. And then I'll be back. We'll put our batting down. Then I'll be the tack down line for the batting. And then we're going to start. I think we're going to have to maybe do one more. I'm not sure. Maybe not. We might be able to get by with just one more hooping. Not sure. I'll have to measure it afterwards to see if we need to do another one. Okay, so I'm going to lay my batting down here. And then we're going to do the tack down line for this batting. It'll do both of them at the same time. Again, this we went back to the first design we did that has the first part of the song. And this is the 14-inch one, so we're going to go back to this one, and then we'll get ready for the trimming. So I'll probably go ahead. I'm gonna stitch this down, tack it down, and then I'll trim the batting before I come back. We'll do our placement line for the fabric, and then we'll put our border on for the next section. Okay, so my batting's all trimmed, and we're ready to do step 3, which will be the placement line for the fabric. And then we'll put our border back in again and be ready for another set of the first part. So it's going to be Joy to the World again. So I'll be right back when this is all my placement lines are put in. Thanks. Okay, so we're ready to put these back in. I got my glue stick back out. I'm going to pull this back a little bit so you can see. I'm going to put my glue stick at the top. I usually do this part one at a time just because it's a little easier. I'm going to I folded my border back so that I can see where the batting is, and I'm going to get this all lined up between get the batting as close as possible there and get it all lined up between my lines, my placement lines. And then if I can get a hold of it here, there we go. Then I'm going to take some glue stick, go down right down between the placement line and the batting, and bring this down and stick that right down. Make sure that's good and stuck at the top. Looks pretty good. So the second here, I'm going to have to move the camera a little bit to get this out. This is a long hoop. All right, got that all stuck down up there. So then let's do this part. We'll finish this up. Might have to do one more hooping. I'm not sure because I'll have to measure it and see how long it is. Let's see if it's long enough. We might not have to. No, we need about 38 because it ends up being 38 inches long, and so need to make sure it's about 39 inches long at least, because we're going to have to have some seam allowances in there. So oops, I'm out of glue. Let's run that down. Between the lines. Like that. Because we got about, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches down here, so I'm not sure. We may not have quite enough. We may have to do the last hooping, and that's okay. We can do that. All right. Let's get this all stuck down well. Okay, and I'm going to do the other one off camera, and then I'll be back in a minute to do the quilting. We're going to do, or actually we have to do the tack down lines first and then the quilting. Okay, they're both in there. Got them all glued down nice and straight, and then we're ready for step 4, which is the tack down line. Hold these all down. Looks like I got a bunch of lint in here. And we're ready for step 5 to do the quilting. So I'm going to get these started, and we'll be back when this is done. Then I'm going to take them over. I'm going to take them out of the hoop and measure them. We might have just enough, but we might have to do that little bit. There's about 4 or 5 inches on the end. So I'll measure them up to make sure we've got enough length. Okay, so I measured these, and they're just barely 39 inches long right now, so I am going to do the rest of it so that I have a little bit of extra in case I need to trim it. So we're going to go hit the home button here, and then I want to go back to that other one that was the 12-inch length. That's why I saved it, so that's nice. That was the last one we saved. So that's the one, Let Earth Receive Her King. So we're going to do that, but we're only going to have just a few inches of it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and get my color sort again. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this to the point of putting the fabric in. And I want to show you, I'm going to do all the first steps off camera. I want to show you what I do when I do the last little bit, because see, we're going to have just this little tail to do. And you got to be careful when you don't have any fabric on part of it, because it can get caught under your foot. So I'm going to show you how to put the fabric on and how to tape it down really well so that you don't get your foot caught. So give me a moment. I'm going to do the first few steps. First step, the batting. Then we're going to do the placement line for the fabric, and then I'll show you how I put the fabric in to do the tacking and then to finish up the longer border. Okay, so we're ready for this last little bit. I wished I didn't have to do it hoop it one more time, but we're going to have to. I just didn't think there was going to be enough. It might have been a little bit short, so we're going to do these. But this is the way you would do this if you have this little bit left, and often you need, the whole thing. So, all right, so I'm going to flip this back just like we've done before. Get my glue stick. We'll do these one at a time. Get my glue stick open here and go across the top. Got it folded back. It's up under here, and then we're going to line up that area just like we did before. Get the batting real close together and get the fabric right between the lines, and then we're going to come down and glue down the rest of the strip. All right, bring this down and right down in between there. Get this pulled back a little bit. See if I can get it. Oops, I think I'm a little crooked here. Just a second. There we go. All right, so we're going to press that down. And we're going to do the other one here. I'm going to get this one flipped up out of my way. Okay, do that. And then we're going to do this other one. Do the same thing. Get our glue stick, go across the top. Fold the little end back. Like that. Flip it up in here. Get all of our batting lined up. Press it down really well. And then bring our glue stick down. Okay, so you want to make sure we got it all glued down. Oops, I think I pulled it up again. Sometimes when they get short like this, it's a little harder to keep it all stuck down. There we go. Okay. There we go. All right. All right, so we got the little end all done. So now what we need to do is we need to make sure that this bottom part is nicely taped down. And I'm going to use a big piece of tape on each side. Sometimes I'll go across if I'm a little closer, but this one I was a little, and this is a selvage, so I'm just going to tape over the selvage here. And I'm going to make sure that I push this down really well on the fabric, because the foot can go underneath, can go underneath the tape too. So I usually make sure that it's really well adhered. All right. So you want to tape that down. And then this part down here is just going to be batting. And you can just let it sew down there if you want. You can start and stop the machine. I usually just let it sew and then cut it off, just because I don't take time to stop the machine. But the next step then, step number 3, will be the placement line, or the tack down lines for the fabric. So we got it all placed in there. Now we're going to go ahead and tack it down, and I'm just going to watch this tape. Make sure that my foot doesn't slide under there. It's been known to do that. So it's just going to go down, and then I'll just let it continue to go on because it makes it really easy. So I'll be right back when this is all tacked down, and then it will start the quilting. Okay, so they're all tacked down. I just let it go all the way down to the bottom. It doesn't matter. And I'll probably just let it do the quilting, because then it's going to do both of them. So I'll just let it do it, even though it's not going to quilt. It's just going to quilt on the batting down here, but that's fine. And just let it go down. It'll quilt through the tape, but we're gonna cut that off, because remember I put the tape right where that selvage edge was, so we'll just cut it right off at the edge of the tape there. But again, you want to watch this tape, because you don't want the foot to slide under it. So just kind of watch it when it goes over that tape, that it's down well. And then I'll be back in a little bit when this is finished. All right, so I got them all quilted, and there's that last little short piece, and I just trimmed it off. I left, here's the hoop here, and that little, where the tape was, that's right where the, the selvage was, so I just cut it off there. So we should have plenty now. I just needed like an extra inch or so because I was afraid I might be a little short. Okay, so now we're going to switch over and do a little sewing before we do the outer borders. The outer borders are going to be stitched together. So there's 3 different blue fabrics. They go in the outer borders. And I have also done these like I did the inner border, in that where the cutting information is here on page 4, I cut my, there's a fabric 7, 8, and 9. So I had mine labeled 7, 8, and 9. But they have the numbers listed here as like 7 is 1, 8 is 2, and 9 is 3 for the fabrics. So what I have those then, I have them circled then 1, 2, and 3. So I know when I get to the last page, you'll see what I mean here in a minute. But when I cut these at the size, the length they said, but I cut them at the 3.5 inch width. And so I did the traditional sizing because we're going to do the same thing with these. We're going to use our quilting design, our border design, and then we're going to stitch it down and tack it down with the glue. So I made mine 3.5 inches by 4 3/4, and then there's at least one of each color that is a little longer. They give you about an inch so you'll have about a 1/2 inch on each end, so that if you need, so we'll need a little bit of wiggle room. So 1 or 2 of each of these are going to be 5 3/4 by 3.5. So I made them 3.5 instead of, so I did add the length. That was in the block by block quilting, but I made them 3.5 inches, so I'm not going to have to trim them off widthwise, just the length. And I'd rather have just a little extra length than, I'm not worried about the width being right, because I think it'll be absolutely fine, because I've always done them this way. So but I did like to have an extra little bit on the end. So I have about a 1/2 inch on each end. So that's what's here. So I have my first fabric, second fabric, and third fabric here. Then if you switch back to page, I have to find it again here, page number 24, it gives you the little matrix about how to put these together. So the B ones, I don't know how well you can see this. It's kind of in a little black square, so it's a little hard to see. The B are on the ends, and the reason those are those ones that are about an inch longer. So we're going to put those longer ones on each end. So like the 1B is going to be the longer one in fabric 1, which is this. So I have one longer one right here. It's in the back. You can see it's just a little longer. Okay. And then 2A, 3A, 1A, 2A, 3A, and so on. So I'm just going to follow this little grid. So here's 1, 2, and 3. And then if it has the letter B behind it, it's that longer one. All right, so I'm just going to sew these 2 strips together with what they tell me to do off camera. I think you can understand what these are. So you're doing fabric 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 for one of the borders. There's going to be a B on each end. Okay, so the longer one. And then the second one is going to be 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So it shows you how to do the second one. And then again, the B's are going to be the little bit longer, those are the ones that are about an inch longer on each end, so that the ends can be trimmed down a little bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew these together off camera, and then I'll come back and we'll be ready to start the actual quilting. Okay, so I thought I'd come on so you could see my first border. So here's my first border. I'm sewing, you're sewed to get these together on the 3.5 inch side. We cut them 3.5 by like 4 3/4. And then these outside ones were 5 3/4, just to give us a little bit of extra on the ends. So I sewed them together on the 3.5 inch sides at a 1/4 inch seam. So I used my Q02 piecing stitch, and I've got them pressed. So here's my first border. So the first one was 1B, which is that longer one, and then it was 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, fabric 1, 2, and then 3B. on this end. This is the longer one for 3. Okay, so I'll be back in a minute. I'm going to do my second one, so we'll have both borders. I did mark this one 1, so I knew this was 1. So this is border 1, so I've got this one on there. And now I'm going to do the second one. So the second one I'm going to start with 2B. So I've got the longer one of 2. So here's the longer one, which is this darker blue with the little polka dots. So I'm going to start with that one, and then it goes 1, 2, 3. We're starting with 2, and then we're going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And again, the longer one on the other end. So I'll be back in a minute when I get my second border done, and then we're going to be all ready to start quilting these. Okay, so here's my second border. And by the way, I did use some Pima cotton, kind of a dark gray Pima cotton thread to do the quilting on these, or to do the piecing on these. So they're all ready to go. And you've got your longer pieces on the end. So we have just a little extra at the end so that we can trim it off when we go to put it on the pillow. All right, so give me a few minutes. I'm going to go and get my hoop ready. I believe we're going to be using, let's get our design up first. We're going to be using Border Christmas 6, the 3-inch one. So let's see what we got for lengths here. Hopefully I'll be able to use my longer hoop, then we can hopefully only maybe quilt it, or maybe hoop it only 3 times. I'm not sure. So let's see. We're going to go to our stick and get the Nativity bench pillow and the quilting, and we're going to get the border. Let's see what they gave us for the 3-inch ones. Okay, so let's go up. I'm going to go up to the 14-inch one because I have a bigger hoop. They give that, you know, you could do a 12 or a 10 or a 7, whatever you have, but I'm going to go ahead and use the 14 because then I don't have to hoop it so many times since I have a bigger hoop. And then what I'll do, again, we're going to do the same thing we did before. I'm going to set that one, and look, it's like Bethlehem. Isn't that cute? I like that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move this over a little bit, and then I'm going to go to edit, and I'm going to duplicate it. So we have 2 of them. So we'll just move them apart. So we have a little space in between like that. That looks pretty good. And then we're going to select, and then select all. And then I'm going to hit the little polka dot that will center them together so that they're centered in the hoop, and they should be plenty short, wide, narrow enough to go in because it's only 2 3-inch ones, so we should be good. They're going to be 3.5 by 3.5, but we'll be good. I'm going to hit OK. So now we got both of our borders in there. And then this one, unlike the first border we did, you know, we had to do 2 different designs. This one will just do the same one over and over. Okay, and you could use a shorter one if you were doing like a really short hooping, but I usually just use the same one, and then I don't have to switch it in and out all the time. So I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to click embroider, and then we're going to be ready to do the quilting here. So give me a minute. I just need to go get my hoop. I'm going to put my no-show mesh in my 9.5 by 14 hoop, and we're going to be ready to quilt these borders. Okay, so we have one last little step to do before we start quilting. I've got my 2 designs up here, and then I'm going to hit layout on my machine, and remember on the last one how we used the color sort so that it would do, you know, all the placement lines, all the tack down lines together. We're going to hit that little button, and then we're going to start the quilting. So when I was looking at this, this is like up on both of the borders, because this is Bethlehem, so this is the top of the buildings over to the left. So when I put these in, I'm actually going to put them in. So I have them marked like this is the way I put them together like this. Here's the mark that I put on the top left-hand corner. So I'm actually going to put them in on the tail like this, the end of it, and because we're going to be quilting this direction. So I'm going to put them in that way so that they're both going the way when I go to put them on the quilt or the pillow, they're going to be right side up. So hopefully that makes sense. So when I go to put them in, I'll show you here, but I've got 2 of them, the 2 of them, and then here's my first one, and I put the pin on the top left-hand corner. So I want this will be the bottom then, and then I'm going to put it in this way since we're going to be quilting downward. Okay. All right. So get these in here. I'm going to get, and I went ahead and changed my machine to, I have my blue embroidery thread in there that, what was it called? It was really, really pretty color, Blue Favorite 1240 that I'm going to quilt it with. And then I've got my just my regular bobbin thread back in my bobbin. And we're ready to quilt. So as usual, the first step of our quilting pattern is going to be the placement line for the batting. Now you're going to have a big enough piece of batting to, you know, cover this whole area, since we're doing both these together. So I got to find a bigger chunk here. I think this will do. So we're going to get our border, we're going to get our placement line in, and then we're going to lay our batting down just like we always have. So this is really fun, and once you get the hang of it, it goes really fast. I mean, you can get, especially if you can do a couple borders at a time. And sometimes when I'm doing like pillows, if I'm doing, you know, especially the small borders, I might put like 4 of them in the same hoop and then do all the borders at the same time. So whichever works for you. This one obviously just has 2 borders, one on the top and one on the bottom. So, but it's kind of nice to do them in multiples, and that way you can get it done a little bit faster. All right, let's see. I think we're gonna have to go this way. I think I've got enough batting. I might have to go get another chunk. These are pretty long, you know. I'm hoping we can only do this. We only have to do this 3 times, since we've got a, you know, 14-inch hoop. It may be long enough if we just do, so 14 times 2 is 28. 30, yeah, we still might not quite make it. We'll have to see. It's going to be about 40, so it might be long enough just to do it. Well, may only have to hoop it 3 times. I'm not very good at math in my head, so. All right, so there's our placement lines. Okay, we're going to lay our batting down here, and then we're going to tack down that batting. Get it all laid in here. And step number 2, as usual, is the batting. We're going to tack down the batting. We'll be back in a minute when this is done. It's going to take a little while because it has to go around it twice. Okay, so then after we do the tack down, as usual, we'll be trimming our batting, and I'm just finishing up. I figured you've seen me trim the batting before, so it takes me a few minutes to do that. So I'm just going to show you the finishing here. So we got our batting, and don't forget to trim down through the middle since we have 2 of them on here. And then the next step, step number 3, is going to be the placement lines for our borders. So we're going to get our borders written on, or our borders, or placement lines, I should say. Sorry, I'm having trouble talking this afternoon. I'm not quite used to the time change. This is Sunday, the day that the time changed. And it's very dark outside, but it's been dark all day. It was rainy all day today. So it's been kind of dark, but it's really dark now because it's 5:30, so it's not completely dark now. All right, so then we're going to get our placement lines on, and then we're going to do this the same way we did the little narrow ones. We're going to use the glue to help us get this on. Okay, so we got both those placement lines. So now we're going to put our borders in. So give me a second here. I got to get everything organized a little bit. With that long hoop, my camera arm gets a little bit in the way. Okay, so this is the top of the top's going this way. So I'm actually going to put these in. This is the tail end. So I'm going to put the tail end in first. So we're going to take our glue and put a little bit of glue across the top there. And they say 1/2 inch to hang over. I usually only do about 1/4. And then I'm going to make sure it lines up with my placement lines. So I got it all lined up. And remember, we trimmed these to 3.5, so it's already the right length. And then I'm just going to take my glue stick, and I'm going to go down between the batting and the placement line on each side. And we're going to stick this down right inside that line. And again, these do not have shape flex on them. They do tell you to put shape flex on them. Sorry about the camera, guys. It's a little bit in the way with this big hoop. So they tell you to put the shape flex on with this, but I just never have, and I've never found I needed it. So I'm going to go ahead and push this up so you can see me. We'll flip this tail back here, glue it down on both sides. So with this longer hoop, it's nice. So use whatever size you have. If you only have a 5x7 hoop or a 6x10 hoop, just use the 10-inch one or the 7-inch one, whatever you have. You just have to hoop it more times, but you can still get the same results. So, and everything is scaled so that it'll all be the same size no matter what size hoop you use. So that's what's cool about it. And then if you need to use like a shorter hoop for one hooping, if you don't want to use the longer one, you can use a shorter one and they'll still match up. So that's what's cool about these designs. All right, so we're getting it all glued in here. I usually do one of these at a time because I find if I try to do them both, I have glue everywhere. So I usually just do one of these at a time when I'm gluing so that I can get it so I don't have glue all over my hands and stuff. I have a hard time. I usually take this over to my cutting table and do this. But I wanted you to be able to see me do it. So it's a little easier if you can lay it out where you're not trying to slide it in and out of your machine. So, all right, so there's that one. We're gonna do the other one here. Let's see here. I'm gonna go this way. Like this. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna go up here with my glue. This is that Soline glue pen. I love these little things because they're about 1/4 inch wide. So it's just the right length or width to go in between, you know, the placement line and the batting. So again, they say 1/2 inch. I usually do about 1/4 over the end of the batting. 1/2 inch is fine too. Whichever you do is fine. Okay, and then we're going to flip this back and we're going to bring the glue down the sides. And this really helped me a lot because I was struggling with the tape method because then it was scooting all over on me. And I've been doing this gluing since about the 2nd or 3rd borders I did. You know, I started the first quilt that I used this method and did the borders. And I'm like, why am I not gluing this? Because then it doesn't move while you're trying to work with it. So I just like this little glue stick. And it's fine to sew through it. It's fabric glue, so it's meant to be sewn through. So it's fine. I'm not super neat with it. I use this a lot. I like the Dritz glue stick too, so if that's all you have, the bigger one. This one's just nice because it's smaller, the tip's smaller, and it's a little easier to get the glue where you want it to be. So, all right, so I think I need to glue one more time. Down this side and this side. All right. And then make sure I got them both on the right side. Okay, I'm just going to glue it down in between our little placement lines. I'm a little crooked down here, so let me work it down. There we go. Okay, so there's our borders. They're all ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and slide this up in there. Okay, and then the next step, step number 3, would be the tack down line, you know, for the, or 4, I'm sorry, step number 4 would be the tack down line for the fabric. So it's going to go down one side, and then it's going to go flip over and do the other side. I'm just going to kind of hold this. This was a little teeny bit loose here, so I'm going to hold it so it doesn't move. There we go. It's going to go back up the other side. Aren't those going to be pretty? I like the fabrics. Now I did have a kit. I happen to have a kit for this one because I bought it when it first came out and I just never got a chance to make it. So I did have a kit for this one. But I often don't use kits. Now I did not buy the embellishment kit because I told you we'll be talking about that. Where I'm actually making these videos before the first video with the talking about the fabrics, but I did not buy the embellishment kit for this because I don't care for the twinkle lights in the stuff. So I'm going to put crystals on this. It'll be really pretty. I need to make sure I have some before I have to teach that class though. I think I do. I think I have some. But I like to use those because then they're pretty all the time. And then because the other ones, when you don't have them on, they're not really very pretty. So I like the crystals. So that's what we're going to use instead of the lights. And I'm also not going to put the zipper in. I like the three-piece backs. They're very nice, and I'm just going to use the 3-piece back on mine. So we're going to do the back a little different too. Okay, so then we're ready for step 5, which is the quilting. So it's going to quilt Bethlehem on here. And then we're going to move on to the next hooping because we're going to do the same one over again. Okay, so we've got the quilting done. Now I did notice that my thread is pretty matchy, and so I can really see it pretty well. You probably can't on the camera too well. It is a little blendy with this one lighter blue, but I thought about doing it in white, but then I thought it might be a little stark, or maybe in the cream color. I thought it might be kind of stark because the tan is very subtle on the other ones. And I wanted the words to show, but this I'm not as worried about it showing. So you do see it on the dark fabrics quite well because there's 2 of the darker ones and you really see it on that. So anyway, so there's our first border, our first section of the border. So then I'm going to take my scissors just like I did before, and I'm just going to trim this out of the hoop. Sometimes it's easier if you use the hoop. I mean, sometimes I take it out and sometimes I just trim it right like this. Just trim right up against the fabric with my scissors and then remove it from the hoop. Just be careful, don't cut into your fabric or anything. So I just use my big shears and do this and kind of poke down through the stabilizer and then just go right up the side. So it just depends on which work. And you can take it out and take it over to your, your rotary cutter and your mat or your ruler if that works better for you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and trim the rest of this out, and then we're going to be ready. I'm going to put another piece of stabilizer in, and we need to do our second hooping on these borders. Okay, so we're ready for our next hooping here. I'm going to go ahead, and we're going to be using the same design that we just got done with. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to start the machine to do our placement line for the batting here. Wanted to show you the border after it was done. You can really see the stitching in them, especially the dark. That's a little bit more matchy over here, but I thought it would be a little more subtle. I thought it might show an awful lot, but you could have done a different color, but I just did what they called for and they recommended the blue, so that's what I did on mine. But I think we're going to be able to just do 3 hoopings because see, we're just down on, we've done 3 blocks. So I think, and there's only 9 blocks on here, so I think we're going to come out just right. So I got to get my batting again. Got to find the right size batting here. Might have enough. May not have to go run for more. When you use this longer hoop, the batting doesn't go as far, so we're doing more at a time. All right, so we're going to get our placement lines. Takes a little bit to do those. I actually really enjoy doing the borders. I haven't done a lot of the quilts this way, but I've done a lot of the pillows this way with the quilted borders and stuff. I do most of my quilts traditionally, but all right. Got a couple quilts that I want to do. So this next year in 2025, we may make a quilt or 2. Got a couple quilt kits that I want to do. All right. So we're going to lay our batting over. And of course, step number 2 is going to be the placement or the tack down line for our batting. And then we're going to trim. Okay, so I'll be back in a moment when these are stitched down. It takes a little bit. Okay, so I'm all trimmed. I got my batting tacked down and I'm all trimmed. Step number 3 will be that placement line for our fabric, and then we'll put our borders back in for the second hooping. Okay, so I'm ready to put my borders back on. So I'm going to, the tail's still going down this way, and then this is the part we've already quilted. So I got to fold this back, and we're going to lay this down up here. I hope you can see okay because this hoop's really long. Okay, we're going to lay this down, and we want to fold the fabric back so that our batting comes right up and can butt right up to each other. Okay, we want it to be nice and flat, and then we want the fabric to be in between our placement lines right here. So the rest of the fabric. So this is going to come down this way. like that. Okay, so you just make sure you get it nice and adhered up there. I put my little piece of glue up there, just like I did before, and then we're going to come down between the batting and the stabilizer and put the fabric, stick the fabric down. So this works. This is a really slick way to do this. It works very well. I still like to do it with the fabric the right width. And that's why I don't put shape flex on. I think what seems to be the problem, I think people were having problems with their borders shrinking. And I think it's when you put the shape flex on, the fabric, that SF101 shape flex, has a tendency to shrink a little bit when you hit it with an iron. And so if you don't put it on, you really don't need it when you have batting underneath. And there's times when you want it in, but I mean, really, you don't have to put it in when you have batting, because the batting acts as a stabilizer. It does make it more stable. And if you have a lot of stitches in the block, like when I'm doing the blocks, I always put it on because there's often a lot of stitching in those. You know, there's a lot of stitches, and it needs to be more stable. But like this, there's not a lot of stitches in it. It's just quilting, so I don't feel it's necessary, and this method works so much easier for me. I prefer to leave it out. So whatever works for you, but this works best for me. So I find that this works really well. Okay, so we're going to glue this down. There's a little glue mark right there, but it'll come off. It's water soluble. So if you get a little glue on your fabric, don't worry. All right, so I'm going to just turn the camera off for a minute. I'm going to do the second one. It takes me a little bit to get them in, and then we'll be ready to do the second hooping. All right, so I'm ready for step 4, which is the placement line, or I'm sorry, not the placement line, the tack down line for these borders. So they're all glued down. I'm just going to watch them. I was a little loose down here at this one end, so I'll just hold the end here, and it'll hop over and do the other side. And it's just going to tack these down, and then we'll be ready for the stitching. This works really slick. I like this method. And when I discovered that I could use the glue stick, it really helped me a lot to get them. And then they stay straight, because otherwise I was having trouble with them kind of doing this in the hoop, because you just taped like at the top and the bottom, and they were moving. And so now this way they stay nice and straight, and it works really well. So I'll be back in a minute when this is done, and we'll be ready to do the actual quilting. Okay, ready for the quilting. So I've still got my blue thread in here, and I'm going to let it quilt the second portion of this border, and then I think we're going to be able to get done with just one more hooping. So we'll have one more hooping here, and we'll have all of our borders done. Okay, they're both quilted again for the second time, and I'm going to go ahead and take these out. I'm going to take my scissors and trim them out. You can use your rotary cutter if you like, and then I'll be back in a moment when I get another piece of stabilizer, and I think we're going to be able to do this in one more hooping, because we've got enough. We got a little tail here, but I think it'll fit in the 14 inches and we'll be good. So I will be right back once I get these out of the hoop and get some new stabilizer in. Okay, I've started the placement line for our batting for the final hooping, because it'll fit. I measured it, so we should be good. So that this will be our final hooping. So the 14-inch hoop, if you have the longer hoop, it's nice because you only have to hoop these 3 times. So we'll get our batting in here, and then we'll get our little borders in, and we'll be ready for the last hoop, this last hooping. All right, there's my placement lines for my batting. I use the same design that I've been using, and then I'm going to lay my batting down. Now, I had a little bit of a batting problem last time, so I'm going to be a little more careful that I hold it a little bit. Sometimes I turn my head, and then the batting's going to get caught. And I had do a little batting surgery in the last hooping. You didn't even see it, did you? So it was okay. But I caught it before it got really bad. So, but just watch your batting. Sometimes it likes to scoot a little bit. Okay, so I got my batting trimmed, and I'm putting in my placement lines for my fabric, and then we'll get our fabric back in here. We're going to have to do the little trick that we tape again at the bottom, because I think it'll be just a little short. There'll be a little batting showing probably, but I'll show you how to do that again when we go to put our borders back in. Okay, so I've got my placement lines on here. I've got my border flipped back here. I'll slip this up in here, and I'm going to go ahead and get this lined up between my placement lines, and make sure your batting comes, butts right up together as close as you can get it. You don't want to overlap it, but just make sure it's pretty close, like that. And then we'll put some glue down here and start gluing this down. See how far down we can get here. It's going to be pretty close to the end. Yeah, we're going to have just a little bit at the end, because I figured we could get this done in 3 hoopings. That was nice to have the longer hoop for that. All right, push this down. Give me just a second. I'm going to push this back up in here if I can get it up there. This is a very tight hoop. This has always been my tight one. I've got a couple that are like that are just kind of tight when I go to put them in and out. This 9.5 by 14 always has been like that. I think I've got an 8 by 12 hoop that's like that too. Okay, we're gonna push those down. Get these on, and then we'll leave the bottom just for a minute while we put the other one in. So I'll show you how to do the taping together. So I'm going to remove this little piece of paper. Don't need that anymore. So I knew where the top was. And I will go ahead and turn off the camera for just a minute while I finish the other one, and then I'll show you how we're going to do the taping at the bottom so we don't catch our foot on the edge of that fabric. So I will be back in a minute while I get my other border in here, and then we'll be ready to finish the quilting. It'll be so cool. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, so we've got these little spots down here that there's just a little bit of batting showing. So we're going to put a piece of the Kimberbell tape across there, and I'm going to put it all the way across. We don't need much on there. I'm just going to maybe cover about 1/4 of an inch. And then we want to make sure it goes all the way across, and make sure you push it down really well, because the foot can still go under tape. I have a hard time with tape. And our Baby Lock Brother feet do not hop up and down. They're stationary, and they like to slide right under anything that has a little bit of a loose edge, so including tape. So we're just going to put a little about 1/4 of an inch over it, and then we're going to push it down really well. All right, so now we can do step 4, which is the tack down for our borders. Get this back in here. Oh boy, that one's a tight one. All right, and then this is going to do the tack down, and I am going to kind of watch this, especially when I get down here, okay? Make sure that it's okay, and then we'll be ready for the quilting. Okay, so we're ready for step 5, which is the quilting. Now I want to caution you again, when you get down here towards this tape, watch it, because that foot can go, if the foot is going forward, it can easily slip under this edge of tape. If it's going kind of backwards, or like this, it's okay, but it's when it's going this way. So really watch when you get down here that you don't get your foot doesn't slip under that tape. All right, we're ready for the border quilting. Okay, so I took my borders off from the last time, and they're all quilted all the way down, and both sets of borders are now done. So I also like to do, what I do is I take them out of the hoop the last time, and then I like to take them over to the iron and just give them a little press to make them lay a little flatter, and all those little seams, where we got the batting butted up together, it would, I like to do that. I like to press them, and then it kind of makes them lay flatter too. So there's our borders. So the borders are done. In the last video will be a live video The first video and the last video will be live on Sew Along with Jan on YouTube, and in the last video we will assemble our pillow. So thank you so much for joining me for part 4 of the Kimberbell Nativity bench pillow, and I will see you in video 5 for the assembly. And if you enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up on YouTube. It really helps my channel a lot. Sew Along with Jan. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, it's completely free. And that way, if you do, then you'll know when new videos are available for you to watch. Also, I have a Facebook group called Sew Along with Jan, and you can come join us there too. And we have all kinds of fun showing our projects and pictures of our projects and so on there. So thanks so much, everybody, and have a great day.